I'm gonna have to close all my other Facebooks. Is it doing it?
It's streaming live on Facebook.
All right, there we go. Hello, you guys. Hello, hello, hello. It is Gina Brogan with Next Level University, and I am here excited to introduce you to one of my very good friends and Ageless Goddess, Feel Good Junkie, and Self-Expansion Guide, Julie Scott. Today, we're going to talk about all things evolving, expanding, and feeling good and letting your heart be your North Star. So Julie, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited to be talking to you.
Me too. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me into your illustrious group. I'm happy to be here and chat with you.
So tell me, Julie, I want to hear a little bit about your story and how you came about doing what you do and identifying with this idea of ageless goddess. Tell me more about that. What does that mean for you?
Well, I didn't always feel like this, so that probably needs to be said. But I think that I really started coming into my ageless goddess being right around my 50-year-old mark. I'm 55 now. So it was right around my 50th birthday that I was actually starting to feel really old. And I think it's the stigma around turning 50, you know, the black balloons, the over the hill cards, you know,
the cultural story that we are ready to drop. We're changing that story.
Right. I mean, and I have to say, I had already been on my self-discovery and self-development path for quite a few years before that. But man, that number hit me like a ton of bricks. And I started well, actually, I didn't notice, a friend of mine told me, but I started referring to myself as an old lady.
Ooh.
And it was kind of like a joke. It's like, well, you know, I'm an old lady now, you know, you know, blah, blah, blah.
And we know the power of words, don't we?
I know. And it's so funny because the more that I said it, the more that I actually felt it. And I, you know, my knee would hurt, you know, my back would hurt, you know, feel like, oh, I don't have much energy. I feel tired. And then
I find that hard to believe now, knowing the you that I know now. I really do.
Know.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like I was wildly different back then, but it was like I got caught up in this story, this habit of saying this about myself because I bought in and I believed what I was being told about what it meant to be turned 50, right? And plus, you know, I had a lot of evidence that I had collected over the years. I mean, my dad, when he was my age or even younger, he would be like, well, I'm moving to the front line, you know, like the front line of the army. It's like, what are you talking about? You know, but you know, again, I had a lot of things that I'd heard over the years. So anyway,
strong, yes.
So a good friend of mine said to me, she's like, you know, I've noticed that you've been calling yourself an old lady a lot lately. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, you are saying that all the time. I'm like, no, I am not. And she's like, yeah, you are. And then I was like, and you know, and I was like, okay, I know she is a good friend and she loves me and she cares about me. So I probably better pay attention to this. And so I really started checking in with myself, and I noticed that I noticed the next time that I was about to say it, and I was like, whoop. And then I realized it's like, this really isn't who I am, and it's not who I want to be. And so I edited it out of my conversations, not only with other people, but with myself. And do you know what was the coolest thing about that? I started feeling more energized.
Wow.
My knee stopped hurting. My back didn't hurt. I felt really good, in fact. And so I changed my story around it. And that's when I started calling myself an ageless goddess. And I did not, where's my book? I did not get that I didn't come up with that on my own. I follow,
Christiane Northrup.
yeah, Dr. Christiane Northrup, and she refers to herself and other women as ageless goddesses. And I think, and I totally, that means to me that my age does not matter. It is literally just a number. I know that's so overused, but it really is. And I feel more vibrant and full of life now than I did 10 years ago. In fact, I was just looking at a picture of myself from 10 years ago, and I can visibly see my radiance from then to now. It's like I am glowing now. Whereas then I thought I was glowing, but not like I am now. And it's like, and I'm 10 years older, so I don't see my age, I see my radiance. And that to me is what being an ageless goddess really is.
Absolutely. That's so fabulous. I love that. And of course, I love Dr. Christiane Northrup and her women's wisdom. And she really has been a force for me in learning about tuning into my inner feminine. One of the things that you and I were talking about the other day that I really found, just every time I hear this story, I'm blown away, and I just believe in it so much. That research study that they did when they took men.
Oh yeah.
Can you remind us what you were sharing with us earlier?
Yeah. Well, I just happen to have my favorite book on the book. Dr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural. This is actually the very first book of his that I read, and then I followed up with You Are the Placebo and Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yeah.
But this one by far is one of the most powerful ones. But one of the stories, and I think it's actually in the other book, You Are the Placebo, he shared a study, not that he did, but some other group of physicians held a study where they took a group of men from the ages of, like, I don't know, 72 to 82, up to this retreat center in north of Boston. I think it was an old seminary that they turned into a retreat center. So anyways, they instructed these men that while they were there, they were to imagine that they were 22 years younger. And so what they did is they decked out this place with decor and magazines, and they had television programming all from 22 years ago. And they gave them all clothing from, as you know, fashion changes, right? Clothing from 22 years ago, drinks from everything from 22 years ago, products, blah, blah, blah. And they created this whole environment for these men. And they were there, I think, for a week-long retreat, and they all arrived at various levels of physiological issues. One man literally had a walker. A few men had canes. Some walked with a limp. Some were stooped over, whatever that was. But by the time...
And they checked their vital signs, right? They took all their vitals, measurements, and heart rate and all of that.
Right. They checked them out. They did a full, blood work on all of them. And basically by the end of that week, they were in the front yard of that place playing touch football. Their walkers and canes were over here to the side. And they had physiologically changed their bodies in the course of a 7-day period, just by imagining that they were 22 years younger. And that's the kind of stuff that I go, wow. I mean, that gives me all kinds of, not even hope, but a knowing that my mindset and what I believe about myself physically will show up in my reality. I mean, here's the crazy thing. When they went back home and they see their spouse, they see their medicine lined up on the countertop, they see their calendar of doctor's appointments, they see, their cane, their walker, they went right back to where they were before they went.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow. It is. It really is.
Yeah. And it's interesting how people really forget to use their sixth sense, their powers of intuition, and the reprogramming of their minds and the habits of thought, word, and behavior, and how intrinsically connected they are with how we show up in our world and what we allow ourselves to experience.
Well, and I also love how, Dr. Joe Dispenza breaks down the whole theory of epigenetics. Because I think
Yeah.
even though it's been around for quite a while, I still think it's definitely not in mainstream
No, not yet.
medicine or media at all. However, it has been scientifically proven. And I think it's important to share here. It's like we've been told for decades that our hereditary background, you know, if like
Yes.
my mother had
Yeah.
cancer, my father had heart disease, and there's a history of it, you know, back through the ages, that I would then be prone to heart disease or cancer. Well, that's actually not true.
Right.
That's actually
It's not
not
true.
how our genes work.
Mm-hmm.
Our genes are either expressed or not expressed based
Mm.
on the proteins, right? And those are affected by the environment around the cell inside our body. So it's not only our outer environment, like toxins, you know,
Yeah.
Roundup, you know, whatever, organic or not organic, whatever, but it's also the environment inside our bodies. So if we are stressed out
Yeah.
emotionally, if we're, I mean, and the thing is that so many women that I work with are so stressed out, but they've lived like that for such a long time that it's their normal. And they're addicted to the chemicals that their brain secretes by keeping them in that stress. And it's just like, oh my God. And you know, just the stories of how people have healed themselves just by being able to lower their
Yep.
overall stress, that fight or flight
Yeah.
feeling. But you know, if you don't know anything different than that, you don't even know that you're in it.
Right.
So that kind of stuff is just like,
And
I love
well,
it.
women in our culture have been conditioned to perform, and we have come to this like, well, if I'm not, where we're trying to be men, basically
Yeah. Yeah.
performing, creating, and making, or
Doing.
accumulating, being productive. And what's happening is we're cutting off our life force energy when we do not allow ourselves to rest. We do not
Yeah.
allow ourselves to take breaks and to lean back and receive.
Yeah.
The feminine energy is receiving energy. We're
Right.
too much in the giving energy, and we're giving everything, taking care of everybody else. And most of the people I speak to are like, oh yeah, but I think I can find some time, or I'll have to find the time. And I'm like, you must create the time. You create the time, but we don't. Typically, women do not have the confidence
Mm-hmm.
that they are worthy of that time because of the programming. So how do you help your clients? What is it that you bring to the table for them?
Well, what you just made me think of, and I think it can kind of dovetail into that, is it's kind of like where I came from, right? So, you know, I spent the majority of my life people pleasing. And I
Right.
didn't even know that that's what I was doing, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're almost taught as a child to be a people pleaser in a sense, right? And it's not of any fault of the parents or whatever. It's just like, eat, clean your plate, eat your food, da, 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 whatever that is, smile for mommy, da, 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 whatever. Things that you may be doing that you don't want to do, but you do it to get love or
Yeah.
belong or liked or whatever. And
Or
so,
keep the peace, or
or
there's all
keep,
the
right.
reasons, right? Why we learn to be good little girls. Yeah.
Exactly. And I definitely fell into that. You know, I was the youngest of four girls. I wanted to be like my sisters. I wanted to fit in. I wanted all these things. And it kind of set me up to be a people pleaser. And I think some people don't always
Mm-hmm.
identify with people pleaser, but you said something that I think a lot of women do resonate with, and that's overgiving. Overgiving is not the same thing as being generous. It's like overgiving, when you're pouring from an empty cup. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think so much of it is because women don't, they're looking for outside validation. They're looking for someone to tell them that they're worth it, that they're
Yeah.
valuable, when our inherent value is there just because we are valuable,
Just
because we
because we
are.
exist.
And but what I teach women to do is to value themselves, right? And so what I found for myself is that, because I had to have my marriage blow up for me to be like, what is going on with me? Because my parents were married for 44 years, so why can't I keep a marriage together? What's wrong with me? And
Yeah.
so I figured out that what I was doing for years was doing everything for everyone else to keep everybody happy so that people would like me, so that I could be cool, so that guys would think I was a cool chick and, all these things. Meanwhile, I was stuffing everything that I wanted, everything
Yeah,
that I needed.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't understand why I was so angry all the time. And I was like, but I hid it. I pretended to be happy because I didn't want to, I didn't want to trouble anyone with my anger or resentment or upset, whatever it was for me. I didn't share it with anyone. I just kept it to myself. I just
Well,
put on a happy face.
it's pretty unattractive, right? To be angry and to have extra emotions that might make it uncomfortable for other people. That's where we
Right.
learn, just like, let's
Yeah.
make everybody comfortable. And then
Right.
if everyone else is comfortable, then we're good. I'm
Right.
safe.
If you got to cry, go in the bathroom. Right. And it's
Yeah.
just like, so it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I kind of woke up in my life and
Yeah.
I was like, how did I get here? What is going on?
Mhm.
Why am I so unhappy? And then I started digging into what my beliefs were, what my story were, I dug into my spirituality, I dug into everything. And I started discovering things about myself, beliefs that that I found about myself from when I was young that weren't true. And, just figuring out my story, what was true for me, my truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and once I figured that out, my whole life changed because I was able to figure out what was important to me, what my values were. And then I could then design my life around my values and always be in alignment with what it is that I truly want for myself. Because I never
Mhm.
really asked myself, what do I want? I was
Right.
always taking care of everybody else, and when I remember the first coach I ever worked with, she's like, what do you want? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Want to be
Right.
happy. I want to be happy. I mean, that was the only thing I could come up with. It's like, well, what does happy look like for you? And I
Yeah.
was like, those questions stumped me.
Oh, I was the same. When I was going through my dark night of the soul and I was crying constantly and I was, thinking like realize, the world would be better off without me. I was telling myself that story. And I was talking to my mom and she's like, well, what do you want out of your life? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean? I have no idea. A lot of clients come to me and at first they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what they
Same.
want. Mhm.
Right. And and what it boiled down for me was that I lacked the confidence in myself, like across the board.
And the worthiness, right? It comes to
Yeah.
worthiness
Well, I
and
mean,
confidence.
worthiness, value, and confidence to, kind of just wrap my arms around what I wanted and go after it because I was so stuck with to who am I to want more, because I also downplayed the problems and the issues that I had in my life. I was like, well, there's always somebody who has it worse off than me. So
Yeah,
I need to
right.
just shut up, put
Who
my
am I
head
to want
down,
more?
work
Yes,
harder and just keep
right.
going and, keep my mouth
It could be
shut.
worse.
And then another coach was like, well, how's that working out for you? I'm like, oh, it isn't, So I had to
Yeah.
give myself permission to like want more,
Hmm. Yep.
and it's so funny though. I'm the most convincing person I know. And once I, changed how I talk to myself, that's when my life changed.
Right.
I had to stop shaming and guilting and shaming myself for having a broken marriage, for having an affair, for, whatever all the things that I
Right.
did that, running away from, life.
Not
I
wanting
ran,
to
I,
feel. Yeah,
yeah, not
that's
wanting
it's
to
a thing.
feel,
Yeah.
I
What
mean, I
so
just felt like my emotions were so big, I thought I wouldn't survive them, but
mhm.
it's not true.
So
No.
what happens when you do that? Like how's that brought you to here? And
Well,
what are you I love what you're doing with your clients and how you're
yeah.
helping them transform their lives.
Well, I mean, I had a lack of confidence in every area of my life. Okay, it was in, you know, relationships, it was family, it was my work, it was my body, it was
Yeah.
everything.
Hmm.
I've always, thought I for years, I thought I was fat. Someone called me a big girl, and that just, and an old boyfriend said I had a big butt, and that was the end of my
Yeah.
confidence in my body. And I just spiraled down, and I ended up gaining weight, and just, would yo-yo diet up and down. And that was a huge part of my identity. Like, I was a kind of a pear-shaped figure, and you know what I mean? And just struggled with my weight for years. And yeah, once I started figuring out my stuff and getting in alignment with what I truly wanted and living my life on my own terms,
Mm-hmm.
and connecting deeply with myself and my body,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, I'd lost the 20 to 25 pounds that I was carrying around like effortlessly. Like
Uh-huh.
I finally released that weight. So I help
Yeah.
women releasing weight for sure. And also gaining confidence, because so many women that I work with are just like me. It's no mistake why people,
Yeah.
we magnetize the people that are similar to us, right? Like attracts like. And so many women just live in a body that they hate.
Yeah.
And they punish themselves with, restrictive diets, and, punishing exercise, or they do completely the opposite and just ignore their self-care from that standpoint altogether, and just really let themselves go. And then they feel like they can never get it back. And then that
Right.
further decreases their confidence and their self-esteem. And it's just like this vicious cycle. And, diet culture really doesn't help make anybody feel better. I mean, I've been on
Right.
every diet, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, you name it. I've been on the diet. And, any diet will work for a time,
Yeah.
but then you go back to your normal life, and you're right
So
back where
really
you
it's
were.
about you're helping people change from the inside out.
100%. Because,
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. That's what I finally did, especially with my body weight. It's like, once I deeply connected with my body, and I didn't really make that connection until about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And because before that, I mean, I was building confidence in other areas, but my body was still, because so often when you get your head in on any game, your body takes a little while to catch up
Mm-hmm.
with it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're sick and you're having thoughts of health, your body has to catch up
Yeah, for sure.
with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't, like I said, when I was 50, kind of come full circle in our conversation to the beginning, when I was feeling old and telling myself I was old. I was a member at this gym in Venice, California, in LA, and a girl there that I knew from the gym, I'd see her working out with a trainer, and she was in pretty good shape, whatever. But then I saw her and she was in really good shape. And I was like, Joanne, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm training for a bikini competition. And I'm like, what's that? And I went home and Googled it, and I was like, I mean, it's like literally, it's kind of like bodybuilding, all of
Yeah.
that too, all different levels. And I asked her, I'm like, can anyone do it at any age? And she's like, yeah. And so right after I turned 50 years old, I entered a bikini competition. And then I did another one the next year,
Oh
two in a
my.
row. But during that process, because it's very, you have to dedicate a lot of time, attention, focus, and energy to looking at and focusing on yourself, which is something that I wasn't that great at, especially from a body
Yeah.
standpoint, because my body was something that I kind of shunned.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing that process, not only did I get in the best shape of my life, but I changed my connection with my body to one that I now know what my body needs. And I
Right.
haven't dieted since. And I have stayed within about 8 pounds of that
Mm-hmm.
weight that I was at doing that
Wow.
competition. And
Yeah.
and so now that's a big chunk of what I teach about, because that was a big deal. And I kind of discounted it for a long time, but I really have dug into that in the last year of really wanting to share that freedom that I feel. I don't ever think twice anymore about how much I weigh,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm eating, if this is going to make me fat, what I'm drinking, whatever. I mean, because I know that, as I call myself a feel-good junkie, I know that I go after now what feels good for me. in every sense. So
Right.
the connection with my body, the connection with my emotions, and my belief systems about myself has kept me in this body happy and healthy and in the best shape of my life at 55 years old. So
Amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So you've dropped, and you and I have talked about this, you've dropped that agreement. You know, if you go back to the 4 agreements where we agree to certain things that we've just learned, you get to change the agreement. And you no longer agree with the idea that it's hard to lose weight after a certain age. We hold on to weight, we slow down, you know, all of that. And I couldn't agree with you more. That's just a story that we've
Yeah.
heard. You know, beliefs are basically just things you tell yourself or you hear over and over and over again. And if you hear it enough times, you believe it.
Yeah.
When you change that programming from the inside, you actually literally create your own belief systems. And that's
100%.
something that
Well,
you
we
and I
create all
share.
of our belief systems
All of them.
100%. And the thing is
Yes.
that if you believe, I just, one of the ladies that's in my program right now, one of her beliefs was, it's hard for me to lose weight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that true?
Is it
You
really
know,
true?
and there's 3 filters I love to pass. And I got this from a book that I read. I think it's called Soundtracks. And
Uh-huh.
it's a great takeaway for this conversation for
3
your,
takeaway. Yes, I was going to ask you, what
I
are 3
know.
things
So
people
when
can take
you,
away?
right, because first, I mean, the first step is always to get awareness around what your stories are. And the thing about
Yes.
human beings is we have the ability to sit back and actually observe our thoughts. You know, it's pretty cool when you really pay attention. But the thing to do with your thoughts or your stories is the 3 filters. I love to pass them through now to see if they're going to help you get to where you want to go. It's like, number 1, is it true? Is it true? And you may
Is
think
it
it's
true?
true.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the second one. Is
Yeah.
it helpful?
Right.
Is it helpful? I mean, is it actually helping you move towards what you really truly desire for your life? And the last one, because sometimes true and helpful, you can talk yourself into. The third one's the killer, which I think is the best of all. Is it kind? Because who beats ourselves up? All of us. So it's like,
Right.
if you can run your stories through those 3 filters and they pass all 3 of those, then you get to keep it. But you've got to be brutally honest with yourself, because it's an
Right.
opportunity for you to find those sneaky stories that are really keeping you stuck. So yeah,
I love that, Julie. Yeah, it's so true, because allow ourselves we allow ourselves to be treated the way we treat ourselves. And we're
Yeah.
not always aware when we ask, why are people mean to me? Why aren't they honest with me? Why am I betrayed? Why am I being judged and criticized? It's because we're doing it to ourselves. So I love your filter. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? And you can run that by everything that you think about. And people really gain their sense of self-mastery when they start to observe their thoughts rather than think that they are their thoughts. You get to be that outside observer and say, oh, do I like that belief system? Is
Yeah.
this working for me?
Yeah. No, and I love what you just said about how we treat ourselves is how other people treat us.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, one of the things that I see happening all the time with women in particular is they break the promises they make to themselves all the time.
Yes. Right.
Like if they decide they're gonna start getting healthy and eating right, you know, starting on Monday, if anything comes up, it could be anything, they'll go, oh, well, I can start next week.
Yeah.
You know, and if, you know, the thing is that because of that, we don't trust our bodies, and our bodies don't trust us. So we haven't made our bodies a safe place for us to be, because our bodies aren't safe with us. You know, it's like, it's such a,
Yeah. And it's
so
amazing that we get to change that. We get to change that relationship with ourselves, and asking, you know, how can I trust myself?
yeah.
And
Yeah, that's one of the things I do teach women to do. Like, and building confidence, I think the root of it is really about building trust with yourself, you know?
yeah,
So if helping women learn to trust in themselves, trust the wisdom of their bodies.
Yeah.
And just set themselves free in life. So that's what I'm about. So I love talking to you.
I love it too, Julie. So how can people find you?
You can check me out in obviously I'm on Facebook. I have a community that I'm growing, and I'm so happy to be leading. It's called the Confident Women's Community, and
Okay, I'm typing that in.
I have lots of freebies in there if anyone's interested. I have a wonderful guide. It's called Connect to Your Body to Make Health and Weight Release Effortless. So yeah, that's available in my group. I have a number of other things in there, but yeah, I would love to have any of your followers come in, check that out. They can just find me.
Well, I'm going to put links in the
okay, cool.
comments of this video, and this is going to go out on YouTube and Instagram TV, and in the Evolution University group. So yay.
Yeah, I mean, I have a website too. I think that's probably the only other thing, just so they could read a little bit more about what I'm about.
Yeah, awesome. Share with me all those links, and we'll make sure that they're in the comments.
Will do. Cool. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie. As usual, I'm looking forward to our next hookup.
I know. And I'm excited about our potential retreat too that we may be doing.
I am very excited about what's brewing. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, honey. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.